Hello, my fellow fans of the small. I'm Laura Blair, and this is Tiny Worlds, Big Stories. Here we celebrate the artists who craft small-scale magic, miniature makers, diorama dreamers, and dollhouse designers, and uncover the stories and creativity that bring these tiny worlds to life. Whether you build tiny scenes or simply love them, welcome. If you've ever seen an artwork move in a way that made you forget it wasn't alive, you're probably encountering the magic of today's guest. Tom Haney creates Automata. Hope I said that right. Beautifully engineered sculptures that bring figures into motion and tell stories through mechanics. He trained in industrial design, spent years crafting props and miniatures for TV and film. And then around 2000, he took the leap into automata full-time. He's also a skilled teacher, and his YouTube channel is one of the best behind-the-scenes looks at how these pieces are actually made. Welcome to Tiny Worlds, Big Stories, Tom. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So I want to talk all the way back to the beginning, talk about your 2-year-old self getting lost in the museum. It's an amazing story. And you wandered away and you came across a mechanical diorama and it kind of blew you away. I'm just interested in like what that did for you, what changed you about seeing it.
Yeah, probably like any young kid. Well, to back up, we went to the Wright Patterson Air Force Base, which is in Dayton, Ohio. My family is in Cincinnati, so it's about an hour away. And yeah, I was told that I was 2 when this happened, but, sort of walking down the way and looking at all the exhibits, and there was an exhibit with a sort of like a helium balloon, hot air balloon that was floating across the sky, and I was just like mesmerized. And I guess my family just walked away and everybody forgot about it. I have a big family, so they probably lost one. And it was pretty traumatic when I realized, oh, how am I going to get back to Cincinnati? I'm going to assume they just left and went home. But my dad eventually found me. But just that incident, but also I have older sisters who probably brought me to the Cincinnati Art Museum. And I remember seeing Calder pieces, just other kind of pop art stuff when it was probably late 60s or so, early 70s, and just being mesmerized by that. I came from some of my brothers and sisters are artistically creative, and I think they recognized that in me as an early, as a 5-year-old maybe.
That's amazing to me to have that memory so early of that. That's pretty incredible, pretty telling.
I mean, there was always like crayons around and paper. And again, my oldest sister, who was 14 years older than me, yeah, who was going to college for interior design, just always encouraged the whole family to make art. And that's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. And of course, my parents were like, you can't make any money on it. You don't, no.
Okay, that leads me to my next question, because I think that whole starving artist thing is definitely, part of the story for a lot of people that expecting that. And I don't think we should, because there's so many tools at our disposal now to be able to make a living doing it. I'm wondering, did you have jobs in between graduating with the industrial design degree and then you did props, which is so cool, with miniatures and things for TV and film? Did you have jobs in between there that led you to where you were going to go?
Oh, after I graduated from college, I worked for a company that made exhibits and props and sets.
Wow. So you went right into it.
For some, and that was only less than a year. And it was, it was not a high paying job. I was hired as a designer, but I was also a fabricator. I went to this University of Cincinnati, and at that time, the industrial design program was very much hands-on. So anything you design, you had to make a model of it out of
what great training. Yeah.
plaster or plastic or all kinds of stuff. It was very hands-on. It wasn't you're just designing things on a board. You're actually.
Were there things in that job that helped you in terms of like craft or deadlines or storytelling for when you became an artist full time?
In that first job?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that really helped me is my bosses were very sticklers about details. I would be making this, I don't know, model of a bottle. Like we did a lot of work for Procter and Gamble because they're in Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
A model of a large bottle for one of their presentations or whatever, and you're sanding and you're filling and this and that. And the boss would lean over and like point out all the little dimples that you miss. And it's like, okay, you get that into your mind, like, I'm gonna make it so perfect that nobody can say anything.
Yeah. No, I could see how that has carried through.
Oh, scratch there, there's a little thing, so you got really good at making stuff.
It's good training. Yeah. So you started on your own at 2000, right? What was the thing that kind of pushed you over the edge to be an entrepreneur with this art thing?
Yeah, I was making, props and models and miniatures, and then I was always freelance, so I always had a studio, and I always had tools, and I always had spare time in between, projects. So in 94, 95, I started making, teaching myself to carve wood, heavily influenced by folk artists, either in Kentucky or Georgia, where we were living at the
Mhm.
time. And, when my wife Paula and I moved from Cincinnati to Atlanta. In '92, we were heavily influenced by folk art, and we saw people who were making whirligigs that spin in the wind. And I was like, I've always been fascinated by anything that moved
Those are super fun. Yeah. I remember those.
artwork. And like, that we really needed it did something, spun or moved or whatever. So we started making whirligigs, and we got a couple whirligigs in a show in Oregon. I saw somebody else that was in the show was making these pieces that were propelled by a small fan that he put on a table and have a propeller, and it kind of he would move his pieces that way, as opposed to outdoor pieces that you're out in the wind, which could be really windy or not windy enough. So I decided, it was like, oh, I want to make a movable figure, arms and legs and this and that. I made when I was a kid, I made, a marionette. So I kind of knew a little bit about how to make jointed arms and legs and body. And so it kind of started with that one figure and that one piece,
Mhm.
which you can see over there. My,
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it on your videos too. It's a cool one. That's the one where you press the keys
yeah,
and he moves. Yeah.
yeah, he's
Very
operated by the
cool.
keys, and then his hat goes up and down. So it's kind of like, when
Yeah.
I was making that, I didn't know what I was making. I didn't know how it was gonna turn out, but it turned out so well, that I said, "Oh, I can make more of these, more of these." So in the '90s, I sort of, in my spare time, made those kind of pieces and then just held on to them. I didn't try to sell them.
Huh.
And then, like, in the end of the '90s, a friend of mine came and saw all these pieces. I had 8 or 9 at that time, and he said, "Oh, you should apply for these, outdoor art fair shows. There's one in Michigan, there's one in Philadelphia, St. Louis, Florida," like, he was telling me about all these top tier, art shows that you could, you set up your tent on the weekend and you sell stuff.
Well, you already had a collection ready to go. That's kind of cool that it was ready.
Like I said, 8 or 9 or 10 pieces. When I started applying to get into shows and would get into the shows, then I kind of started making, uh, a few more smaller things and a lower price point. So that was 2000, and when I started to get in these shows, and I've heard these shows are really hard to get into, you jury, you send images, and and so I got in these shows that were supposedly really hard to get into. So I'm like, this is what I want to do, especially
I would imagine you were the only automata artist there. Am I correct? That's so cool to stand out. Yeah. I love that.
I was doing something that no one seen before or nobody else was doing, and it was unique, and it had a different look to it for sure.
Yeah.
You know,
Can you walk us through the process of having a concept and then just the basic steps and the motion part? You don't have to get too technical, but you have your idea and your ideas are very clever. From there, like what's the first thing you start carving wood? I know you do clay for the faces. I'm very interested in your process.
let me think. Lately, I've been working on a lot of commissions, so I get some information from a person who wants a certain kind of piece, either of their wife, husband, or their family, or just something that's they enjoy or like. Usually, I do a really crude drawing just to get my idea down. Oh, this guy or woman or whatever is going to be doing, this casting a fishing rod or whatever. So I just kind of sketch it out real simply. Then what do I do? I kinda know what the movement is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very important when deciding on what to make. It's like, "Oh, it's gotta be an easy enough movement for me to do, I mean, I've had challenged myself over the years, but I can't have a figure that's like walks across the room or
Right. Well, the simple movements that you've done, especially with the Rosa Parks piece, it was a simple movement, but super powerful. I mean, I could see where yeah, the movement's important.
and that's always a great thing to find something that's like a fairly simple movement. I don't want to get overly complicated with tiny mechanical things inside.
Yeah. It's gears, is it not? It's gears that work together and with a crank for the most part.
Some gears, cams, levers, weights sometimes.
Did you have different kinds of things you used for the heads? Were you starting with a different medium? Were you doing wood and then you got to clay? How did that, was it easier?
I Everything was wood. Um, Again, heavily influenced by folk artists and wood
Hmm.
carvers. And I would even different people we would visit, I'd take chunks from their wood pile, and then they're like, here's chunks, and I was like, oh, I could take that home. And I learned about basswood. I use basswood for all my carving now. So it's like, oh, this is the wood that everybody uses to carve. Okay. Um,
Clay is great for expressions like if the videos I've seen you when you paint them to the different hues on their face, the rosy cheeks. Is that easier to do with the clay with this whole new process you've got?
I wouldn't say it's easier, but it has evolved. Like I said, everything was wood before. I think there was a time around 2005 where I was kind of felt like I paint myself into a corner as far as like setting up all these rules for myself. Yeah. Like everything has to be made by me. Everything was wood. What was the other thing? I didn't want to use electricity or batteries, anything like that. It was much more like, I kind of had all these.
Were any of those rules loosened in the last few years? Or are they all
I'm
kind of the
sorry,
same?
what?
Your rules, you loosen them.
Any of those at all?
So in 2005, I said I'm going to throw out all. I remember talking to, yeah, I remember talking to a fellow artist at one of these art shows. I said I'm going to get rid of all the rules. It's like I don't want to, because I saw a lot of people that I like, the work that I like that were using found objects, and I've always liked collecting things. Oh, this is interesting, and that's
Yeah, that is another question I have because I bet you have a treasure trove of ephemera and artifacts.
yeah.
Am I right? Yeah.
It's I have enough stuff. But I don't have there are some people out there that just they have too much stuff. I don't know. I like to know and remember what I have. Yes.
Yeah, I have a lot. Yeah.
But back to the change. So that's when I changed. It was 2005 where I changed, I decided to use fabric on my figures because especially there was one point where I had a woman, a dancing woman, who had a wooden dress because I wasn't using everything had to be wood, and so the movement was really kind of challenging. And I was like, oh, if I use fabric, it can be much looser and it's much, a little bit more like puppetry.
Yeah.
I also changed my kind of color scheme from a bright and colorful folk arty look to hopefully more contemporary. I was really frustrated with the heads that I was carving at the time because they were all like this straight blank expression that I don't know. I was just like, and I think I saw something on TV where somebody was like taking a wad of clay, an aluminum foil ball, wad of clay, and pushing it. It's like I could do that. I'm gonna do that. And you keep mushing it around until you like it, and then you like bake it, and then it's hard.
And then then you get to
And
paint
you
it.
can sand it and paint it, and
Yeah, it's a brilliant, brilliant medium.
with that um, movement from the wooden head to
I bet. Yeah. Do you is the majority of your work now commissions or what percentage would you say?
I would say about 80 to 90%.
Wow. Okay. So you've really made a name for yourself and people pass your name on to other people who love this kind of art, I would imagine. Yeah. Have there been any that have super stood out for you? One that was just like, oh, I can't wait to make this.
The more complicated ones are just because of the challenge is so great. Like this guy, last year, 2024 rower piece, the guy in a single skull who wanted this person rowing. And this guy was a rower, so he knew he knows how the boats look, how the rowing motion should be, and all that. So I knew I couldn't like fake it and do a guy on a rowboat. He wanted that whole thing because he knows, like all the details and all that stuff. So started off, I bought plans for a real 22-foot boat
Wow.
and shrunk it down by 7 times, whatever scale. So I shrunk it down and because I had to make it the kind of the size of what my figures are, and then trying to figure out how that motion worked. It took a lot of.
You looked it up, didn't you? You had like something for online that you were looking at the crew motions. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. I love your dog piece too. The 4 dogs. That looks a little complicated, making sure they all
Especially I don't know that much about dogs. We don't have dogs.
I love dogs. That piece spoke to me. That's a great one. That was a commission, obviously, because it looked like parents of the 4 dogs.
Specific. Oh, we have this dog who looks like that, and that dog looks like this, and this is,
Yeah.
this is their dogs, and I wanted them all to, move a little bit. And
Oh, it was brilliant. I was a dog person. Yeah, that one really spoke to me. Yeah. Do you still teach? Do you do any workshops? I know you have something very special that you do one-on-one. I read about that and you can talk about that. But yeah, how has that kind of gone for you in terms of teaching? You're great at teaching on your YouTube channel, but any in-person experiences?
things. Yeah, I like to share my things that I've learned and things that I've discovered. People seem to appreciate it. I taught at Aeromont a year ago, which is in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and in a great artist community and basically artists teaching other artists how
Yeah,
to do
no, that's fun.
things.
Yeah.
So that
Mhm.
went really well. I had 8 students. I'm going to do it again in June, end of May, beginning of June next year. But I think I'm going to try to focus on movement and different ways to move things and not so much like automata and getting so technical. I mean, last year my class was called Elements of Automata. So I wanted people to know that at the end of the week, you're not going to leave with a piece of automata, but I'm going to teach you all the different things that how to do. And and people did end up by, making a piece of automata because they always.
It's a group, right? There's a group of you. I mean, like I did a deep dive. There's a lot of you out there that support each other, and there's like not society is the wrong word, but do you all kind of talk and compare notes and yeah.
Definitely people are like me who are full time. There are definitely people who are like it's a hobby or it's a retirement thing, or maybe I want to try to do this. The good thing about the internet and you can find people all over the world that do this, but also it just kind of spreads the word of people doing it and trying it. And in my time doing it, 25 plus years, it's like more and more people have been.
Yeah, I know. I was so surprised how many there were. You can totally tell a Tom piece. It's very obvious. It's a Tom Haney piece. Yeah.
I mean, there's not a ton. Because there's an automata group on Facebook, and somebody asks, how many people are doing this out there? And in my view, people that are doing it full time as a living, I would say be less than 30, maybe. And
Each piece takes a really long time, right? I mean, to be able to make it viable as a living, you definitely have to have time with each piece.
it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of. You have to be kind of mechanically inclined, and I've always been mechanically inclined. Because some people are like, will get it, and some people won't get it.
Well, you've got the
Like
gift of
anything.
left brain, right brain. You've got both. Sounds like they're both pretty strong. Totally makes sense to me how you went into this because it's mechanical, but it's also super artistic.
Yeah, and it involves painting, which I like to do, antiquing, found objects now, fabric. I've always worked with fabric. Yeah, wood carving.
You never get bored. It's all those different mediums. Yeah. Yeah. And I know you're a really big fan of music and you always have really great music on your videos. Great taste in music. You had some opportunities to do videos for some musicians. Can you tell us about one of those experiences?
Yeah, back in 2011, a band called Little Tybee, that was a local band in Atlanta, contacted me. Brock Scott is the main singer and musician and writer of this music, contacted me about borrowing some pieces for a music video. And of course, how his mind work, it just goes on, he's a really creative person who's like, oh, let's do this whole full blown like
Oh,
puppet thing. And so it turned into a 5-month project. I made
wow.
5 different marionettes, and he came up with most of the storyline, but we kind of collaborated and said what I could do and what I couldn't do, and we did a Kickstarter and raised money. I also got some donations from friends and did this full-blown video that was,
What was that like seeing that at the end? So all of your work put to music with a story.
it was amazing, really.
I bet.
It's just really a great, uh, experience, definitely a labor of love. I I got a little bit of through the Kickstarter, I got paid, a certain amount, but
Yeah.
and then part of the deal was I got to keep most of the marionettes
You
so
got
I
to
could
keep
use
that's
them
cool.
in other
Mhm.
pieces,
That was smart. Yeah.
If it takes 50 hours to make a fully movable figure,
Wow.
I want that back and I want to be able to try to sell it, It's just
Of
sort of like,
course you do. Yeah.
I'm trying to make a living here.
Did you have some early mentors, people that you just looked up to as you were coming up? And then who are your peers now that you just really, like to talk to about all of this?
Different folk artists that we kind of visited or known. Not everybody did kinetic things. There was a guy named R.A. Miller who was about an hour from Atlanta who made whirligigs, who would fill his whole yard with these very primitive, very, cut out of metal and 2x4s and just very primitive. But it was just so exciting to go to his place and see these hundreds of whirligigs spinning in
I
the
bet.
wind. And I always thought, that's what I'm going to do when I get a yard is him, fill it up with whirligigs. And now we have a yard and I have 0 whirligigs. But I keep thinking maybe I should. That for sure. A lot of other, yeah, folk artists, a lot of them are not around anymore, but
Mhm.
just looking at their work, people who were doing work that was just right out of their head. They weren't like looking at something else and trying to create their own thing. It was, oftentimes primitive, if- amateurish, if in a good way, in a very good way, kind of just doing their own thing and not like worrying about, is somebody going to like this? Is this going to sell? People are just, compelled to make this stuff. And that's what I think attracted Paula and I to following and being interested in folk art. So that's, that's sort of like, I'm just going to start. Luckily, I had that time because my work was freelance. We had time to travel, time to visit people, but also time to sit there and like carve some things or paint or whatever. I just make different things.
So would you say you're always, even when you weren't making things for when you were working for the companies doing Procter Gamble things, and you were always making? It was always kind of on the move to see what you could do next. Yeah. Yeah. I could see how it took you to that 2000. What a great year to start, because now you know you've been by yourself for 26 years, right? My daughter was born in 2000. I love that year. But I could see where you got to that point where it's like, okay, I've done all this work and I'm ready to roll.
Because when I was making the end of the 90s, I was doing a lot of good props and model work, and but none of it was my idea, and none of it was very challenging. I just like wanted to challenge, Plus, it was in the whole advertising world of Coca-Cola ad or UPS, which is fine, but it's like I've always wanted to be an artist. This is what I want to do. This stuff I want to do that, and my own ideas, not somebody's, art director.
Well, it definitely served its purpose. Seems like it took you to that next step for sure. The perfectionism and all.
Yeah, and so when I got, started getting into the shows, like, this is it. That's what I'm gonna do. I've always wanted to do. It was like a no-brainer. It was like one day, okay, this
I'm
is
in. Did you do exhibits and things? Did you do any shows like locally or in the United States where people could come and see collections?
no, I did those art shows, art fairs for
Mm-hmm.
7 years, and then I started trying to get into galleries because I was trying to basically, I was thinking, "Oh, a gallery will be able to get my prices up." Like, will promote me and say, "Look at this, and look, isn't
Mm-hmm.
this interesting?" And just kind of push me to be to that next level, but I was making a living through those art fair years, but
Well, I would say that the work speaks for itself, though. I mean, you get to the point where people want an original from you, and they're willing to invest in it. Yeah. So it doesn't happen overnight, but I can definitely see how that happened.
my work was just so different from what most galleries had. One of the main things is that it was kinetic. It's like, oh, a painting, a drawing, you hang it on the wall, done. Sculpture, you put it on a table or stand or whatever. This, you have to plug it in, you have to turn it on, you have to turn it off, or you have to
Yeah.
manipulate it. They just, you know, just pretty much every gallery I looked into it, just like, they don't know.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Really? I was just thinking if I was a gallery owner, I'd be all over that because it's so unusual.
And I was in galleries. I was in a gallery in LA for 4 or 5, and then I was in a gallery in New Orleans. And both of those situations were perfect for my work
Yeah.
because the place in LA was very high end antiques from Europe, artworks, and he loved the figurative stuff. So it was kind of right along the thing. And he did well with my work, especially when there were shows. And then in New Orleans, they had such an interesting, funky mix of artists that my stuff fit right in. But yeah, there was a time where I was just like, I just want to, I'm good. I'm surviving on these commissions
Well, and there's the commission the gallery gets. They take a huge chunk too. So it's kind of nice to be able to not have that anymore. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
you're independent, you're 100% on your own. You're not like,
Yep. Yeah, I get it. You can make exactly what you want to make, what's in your head. Do you have one tool that's like the indispensable, couldn't live without it tool on the things that you work on?
I would have to say my X-Acto knife that I do most of my carving with.
Mm-hmm.
It's green. So
how often do you change the blade? I always wonder, like, how often are you supposed to change? I guess it depends on what you're carving with it, but
when it gets dull, I change it. Actually, I have a strop that you can I can go back and forth and not sharpen it, but hone it. So I've been trying to extend the life of the X-Acto blade.
I just feel like I'm changing them all the time.
Then you run into a piece of metal or whatever. But then it gets downgraded to another X-Acto knife that I use for stuff that I don't care if it's super sharp. So I have like 2 of those.
You have two going on all times?
Yeah. Well, one is over by where my paint is, and one is like, and I know exactly where it is. I have the stand, and it's like, I know this is where this goes, and that's where it should always. So I'm like, I really try to stay organized where.
I was going to say, you have a big space, so is everything has a home in an area where you do certain parts of the project?
Yeah, that, or it's kind of a little bit color coordinated. Like I have 2 pliers, one is a cutter and one is a regular pliers, and they're both red handled. And then I have one
Oh, wow. There's that left brain coming in.
orange handle, and my pencils and my X-Acto knife are has green handle. So it's just easier to see on my table. Oh, there's my X-Acto knife, or there's
totally doing that. That's a really good idea. The color, especially if you're visual. I'm totally visual. The color thing, that makes perfect sense. Oh my. So your social media is really good, especially with your YouTube. Do you do it all yourself or do you have someone help? Wow, it's a lot. It's a lot of work.
I looked at the other day and I think it said I have 95 videos, which I was like,
wow. I guess, yeah, you do have a lot of videos on there. And you have shorts. And every platform's got its own thing. Like you have to really stay on top of it. And that's how I found you. But you were very long time ago, actually. But you're very prolific with your posting and your videos. And you're generous. Like you really share a lot. Was there a time when you thought, I'm going to share my secrets on how I make this stuff just because?
that's what I want to see when I see other people's work. I want to see, how did you do that? What's behind there? What's underneath there? And I've always been that way. I've always like taken things apart. Oh, that's how that works. It's like, that's just one of the greatest things you could do as this kind of artist is like, get some mechanical thing, can opener, whatever, just sewing machine, take it all apart and see what, well, this pushes that and there's a spring that pulls it back and just, it's fascinating. Then you get all the pieces and parts. Oh, look at these springs I could use for something. And it's like something that's like, they really should teach you in school, it's like.
They should, yeah. Well, and if you're not super left brain, it can be a bit of a struggle speaking as someone who lives entirely on the right, and I'm married to someone who like took apart his first bike when he was 4, I can see the difference in the interest and the talent. Okay, before I ask you about your handles and your social media stuff, I have one little question that I ask everybody, and that is, what did little Tom love that grown-up Tom gets to honor through this work?
I just think it's probably creativity. I've always been creative. Like in school, even when I was in grade school, we had a project to make a little thing out of a cube, and it's like 6 sides and you fold it up and this and that. And I always made something that was like way and above what everybody else was making. And there was just,
There's a calling there.
I think that's cool. And it's I nowadays I'm really appreciating that gift. So it's kind of like there's no way I could be doing anything else. I have that creativity.
What a great thing to be able to say.
I have that brain that turns things upside down and inside out as far as like thinking problems through. Well, what if this went this way? What if that, and I'm always like, part of it is I've never been diagnosed with dyslexia, but I'm pretty darn sure that I have.
Oh, interesting.
And I
Really?
saw somebody in a TV program like 10 or 15 years ago talking to this CEO of some creative company, and they're like, you have this dyslexia, but you could take something for it that would help you. It's like, I don't want to do that because it makes my brain work the way
It's a superpower.
it's very creative. Yeah. It's very like upside down.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Always, again, if that's part of it, I'll take it. It's just, yeah. And I've always been, a visual thinker and just curious, very curious. I think I was probably instilled by my parents and my family, be curious, how does this,
Be
how does
curious.
this work? What's inside of there? Like I'm always questioning and always looking at stuff. Does that work?
Well, finish up with that. You've thankful that you're a creative person, and it's always been good to be curious because it can make life that much better.
Never stop being curious. And
Yeah.
never stop learning.
Well, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about with curiosity, everyone's trying to figure out what their passion is. Well, I don't know what I'm passionate about. And it's really not that. If you follow your curiosities for a long period of time, you find your passions because it's in there somewhere.
Figure it out at an early age. Some people, it takes a while.
The timing's perfect. It's all a means to an end. Where can people find your work online? And I'll put it in the show notes, but if you just tell us your favorite spots for showing your work.
My website is tomhaney.com. Instagram is Tom Haney Artwork. Facebook is Tom Haney's Artwork.
This is easy.
I always
Okay,
wanted to, when I got on Facebook, actually I was on, MySpace first, and then everybody's going to this new thing, Facebook. And that I was doing it to promote my work, not to.
Oh, you're an early adopter with that. Impressive. You were an early adopter with Facebook. A lot of people weren't thinking to do that with their art back then.
But so when I got the business, that the page was like, I don't want this to be Tom Haney's studio. The artwork. It's like, I could have named it Artwork of Tom Haney, but it was like, it's all about the art. And I love the word artwork because it has the word work in it. Because my work is work. It's hard.
Really. Start to finish on what's your longest piece? The longest piece that's ever taken you?
I'm not like throwing paint around and, I'm an artist. Yeah.
Can you think about one piece that took you like in a ridiculous amount of time that you remember how long it took you?
That piece right there called Interdependence, it has the balls and things like that. Thing during COVID 2020. That I think took 450 hours. I do keep track of my hours because that's how my prices are based. It's like, and I've always done that. I'll write down at the end of the day how many hours did I work? 4, 5, 6, 2. Just always. And then at the end, I add them all up, and it's like, oh, okay. And so I'm kind of learning. It's like, to make a fully articulated figure, it's 35 to 40 hours. Could be more just to make the figure. That's arms, legs, all carved, all the fabric and the clothes painted.
And then you got the mechanical part, which is quite time consuming.
Yeah, and which can be a guess because it's a lot of it is trial and error. It's like I can't say, oh, it takes me this long to make that kind of it's like I think this is going to work right, and then if it doesn't, you have to redo. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to estimate those pieces.
That's brilliant though, to count the hours and then you have an hourly rate and you know what your work should be priced at. That's smart. Yeah. I love it. Well,
Much.
this has been delightful. I just love your work so much. It's been really fun to do a deep dive, and thank you for taking the time to come out of your busy studio schedule. I really appreciate it. And everyone go check out Tom Haney's work. You'll be better for it. It's good stuff. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Before you go, you can explore my artwork on Instagram and on my website, Laura Blair Art Studio. Links are in the show notes. And if you'd like to stay connected, I'd love for you to join my newsletter where I share new work, stories, and behind-the-scenes thoughts from the studio. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.